challenging situation, I got bombarded with emails from that person. And they were derogative. They were putting me down. They were telling me I was going to die. They were telling me I was a bad mother. Because during that time, I also actually had a brain tumor. So that is all coincided with me leaving a really challenging situation. So compounding lots of things on top of one another. And so him saying that I could die evoked a real fear, because I did have to undergo surgery. So yeah, I think that's where also then all the threats and the subtle coercive control, the gaslighting that happened was all making my mind go into the worst case scenarios. Like our minds, we are such creative beings, right? And so it was at night, I would paint it all out, whilst at the same time knowing that I'm always safe. Like this was probably the worst crises or the most confrontational thing. But I had gone through to other things where I not knowing how to pay the next mortgage, or moving into a different country with 2 weeks of finances and then knowing I had to find work, right? I have done those things, but I know I have this deep innate knowing and trusting my higher guidance, my higher self, my intuition, and I know I always land on my feet. And yet the mind goes into all of those stories and so what I think what I had to
powerful, yeah. So really, I mean, so what I'm hearing here, and I'm just going to reiterate for a lot of people, is that you develop this huge fear around opening emails, and it all comes back. I actually developed something very similar that I didn't realize, and it was regarding to another person significant in my life. As a result, I couldn't go shopping for groceries. Now, I know that sounds crazy. And I used to say a joke to my kids and say, I hate shopping. And because I hate shopping, I'm always shopping, because I've never got enough stuff, because I never buy a lot of stuff. And then I have to go to the shops again. So this is the ironic character of what goes on. And so it just goes to show that we can have a fear and an internal thing that stops us from going forward because of an experience that we've had. And obviously you had to really kind of grab that, because that had held you captive, right? Yeah. So you had to grab that. Can you talk about, like, what does a person do to overcome that? Because you've got so many, you're a medicine woman. So tell us about how a person overcomes that kind of a fear.
I think the initial action was to take it out of my reality, make sure that it stopped. Because when we're in it, to the extent that I was, there is no way we can, like, it takes spaciousness and time to heal these things. So if we're constantly bombarded with something, it's the body, and we go into fight or flight or freeze. And
my name is Terry Messenger, and I am
Hey, and welcome to Terry Messenger's Genius Zone. And, this is the place and the space where you are going to get your own free masterclass, absolutely free. Everybody has a story to tell. What's yours? Why do you exist? Do you matter? Are you loved? Does your life mean anything to this world? What is your why? What is your life purpose? Are you ready to turn your life around? Know your mission and get crystal clear clarity of what you were born to do. The good news is I have the key to your success.
Hey, and welcome. I cannot wait to get into this incredible and empowering podcast, because every podcast we do, you are promised to get value as if you are attending the most powerful masterclass. And this lady, can you imagine that you want to create your epic success? Maybe you are a person who is ready to embrace your book, your script and what you are writing. Maybe you are a person that wants to bring all of your creativity into the most epic and powerful way. And this woman knows the key, the secret. This lady, her name is Krystall Hille. She is a activator, medicine woman, and alchemist. She knows about the way that the true power is in becoming the storyteller, but taking control of your life and doing this through some of the most powerful modalities. So I'm going to bring this beautiful lady on. So with no further ado, I bring you Krystall Hille. Hello, and how are you, Krystall?
Thank you so much for having me. I can't wait for this conversation, Terry.
Oh, me neither, because guys, you're going to want to stay to the end, because there is a very special meditation. And it doesn't matter if you're not an author or you're not ready to go into that, you are going to really benefit. So, really, you understand, obviously you have the gold nuggets of what it takes to help people to craft their message, their book, and, write their story. But you also know something else, and that is that a lot of people think, that was my word, think that they get stuck. But you know something else, and this is actually a very big secret to what is actually going on, because we know that awareness is power. So you told me backstage it's not stuckness. However, would you like to just open that up so that they can get to know what it is that's going on?
Yes. So when you know that you should write a book, and there's this should word, and you know that you have so many things to write, it's not that you're stuck. It's actually that you have too many ideas. There's so much creativity floating around. You could go in this direction, in that direction, and that is creating an overwhelm, which then causes shutdown, which we perceive and understand as stuckness. So that's what's going on.
I can so relate to that, Krystall, because, I'm a creator, and I have about 3 books that are just sitting around and they have never been finished. And I think that, even for people who are not, focused on writing or finishing a book, what you've just said is so key. So it's almost like your gift becomes your weakness. So you're creative, you've got all these ideas, and you end up in a spin and really going downward rather than upward and forward, because of the fact that, as you say, you're suffering overwhelm. So tell me, unpack for me, what is the way to help a person like me or anyone out there? And you can even go into the first part of the void to value if you want, even utilizing me. I don't mind, but however that looks, can you unpack the best way to overcome that?
Yes, it all starts with intention. The intention is like, what is the core intention that I choose to, why I write this book? Like, why are we writing this book? And if the intention is to build business or to establish yourself in your credibility, then maybe the book needs to go down one path. If the intention is, and I had a lady whose son was in incarceration, and her intention was, I need to get this book out for other women or other parents so that they have some resources and some tools. And she was scared that she would forget all of the intricacies that were going on. So she had a very strong intention and motivation to write that book right here, right now. So the intention was service, it was contribution. Other people want to write their memoirs, their teaching memoirs. And so in order to potentially process something that has been quite difficult, so it becomes more of an introspective journey that then serves the reader as well. So what is your intention for writing this book? And we need to blend strategy with intuition and passion, because it's all very well to say, oh yeah, I want to get, I want to be a thought leader in this field, but if there is no passion behind it. And I give you an example, like when I was looking at, writing my book, I'd been working with people for 3 years saying every business needs a book, but I did not have my own business book. And so I felt like I'm really out of integrity here. So what do I do? What do I even write about? That was my question, because I did not want to write another book on how to publish a book or another book on how to write a book. And I could think of nothing more boring. And yet this is the thing that I do. And I think that's also sometimes why people get stuck, because they think, well, who would listen to me? There are people who've done this for 20, 30 years, real experts. Why would anybody listen to me?
And yet, where did those people that wrote books come from? And yes, that is so true, Krystall, because, people think that about almost every field where they want to excel. They feel like, well, why, and that's a really undergirding story. Like, why they don't realize why they're not really achieving their greatest success, but it's really because they're questioning themselves. So, I wonder whether we've got any kind of thoughts around that, because one of the things that comes into my mind is what John Maxwell said, and that is fail forward. And, really every single person, if we want to inspire our listeners, is really geared up in a way that, the people that have really made it big time had to fail first. So, what is the importance of activating their knowledge versus healing or strategy?
Yeah, I think we have to understand that, or look at and question the concept of thought leadership and expert status, because we put people on a pedestal who are just a little bit further ahead than we are. What most people forget is that they are an expert at their lives. So we all are experts. We are experts at our lives. And so then it becomes about, so what in my life do I draw on in order to write the book that only I can write? Because I'm the only expert in my life. And so the example for me was that I ended up writing a book on how to overcome sabotage in writing a book. So I drew on the archetypes of like the hero's journey. I keep telling my audience or my clients to use the hero's journey as a framework for their own life journey, and to put stories into that and help the reader go from the beginning to the end. And so then I suddenly realized, well, the hero's journey applies to the author journey as well. At first, we refuse the call. Then we meet a mentor. Then we get the courage to cross the threshold and commit to writing the story. Then we're met with all of those inner trials and tribulations and tests and battles, which are procrastination, self-doubt, overwhelm, all of those things. So I thought, well, if I can normalize the journey and say, you're not special, there's nothing wrong with you if you have these things happening, then maybe we can overcome the self-sabotage, because as you said, awareness is key. But it's going back to the expert status and how to find your title, how to find your topic, sea of people who have already written about your expertise, is to combine things. So I have got a theater background, I've got a coaching background, and I was thinking, well, I'm going to bring those things that I have and that unique combination of skills, I'm going to bring that into my book, because that combination is unique to me, and therefore only I can write the book I'm going to write. And my stories will make it even more unique, and my perspective is needed. And this goes for anyone. So I'm curious, Terry, after I've said this now, if I can turn the question around to you, having heard what I've just shared. Has a theme, like you said, you have 3 books, has one kind of step forward for you?
Well, I am finding that in the real world, some people might say by accident, but we know there's no such thing as by accident or even coincidence. It's more like a God incidence. What's happening is I seem to be a person, I'm an activist, so I tend to just go, I do go forward, maybe a little bit too quick, but then I haven't finished those things, and I'm not a good finisher. So I'm a very, very good starter. And now, getting back to your question, I kind of like step away, and when I forget everything, coming back to the by accident, it's like all of a sudden the books, like I've written the transformation and this transformation book that I've written, and then I've written an ebook where it takes people through their own transformation with questions, and then I've got another one which is how to kind of launch a masterclass with lots of scripts and stuff like that in it. And what I can see is that even though some of them were done, I'm telling you the truth when I say, Krystall, I haven't touched any one of those books for at least 2 years. And yet I'm going, oh, that's looking relevant now. So, yeah, that's where I'm at with it. So I don't know that I did answer that question very well, but maybe you have another question for me.
Again, coming back to the intention, where is your business going? What lights you up at the moment that you might want to write about? And maybe we start from there, and then you can draw on things. And it might even be a combination of all 3 that suddenly end up in a book.
You know what? That was a loaded question. You don't even realize how loaded that question was, because I know that I'm an intuitive person. I'm an encourager and an exhorter, and I do have that natural healing gift. But when you ask me that question now, and I did mention this backstage, that I've got a very public crisis going on right now where my husband is fatally ill, and he has CJD, and that means that he is now unable to speak, feed himself, or he's basically just, he's a spiritual being and nothing more. And he put me into this role in the beginning, and he is a famous chiropractor and an energy alchemist and healer. And, so what that's done is, whilst I've thought, and I did touch on this with you, that because it's a dark night of the soul, it doesn't get much darker than that, right? So, it's forced me, I shouldn't say that word forced, but it's almost put me into a position where it's actually like it's brought out my true intention. And that true intention is making miracles happen, allowing people to kind of like live the best of what they can with what they've got. And I know that my husband is in a fatally 100% everyone dies. And if I can say that he is, like, since I've been researching, he is the only person still alive since the first person, which is not very many, have had that. So that's sort of put me into a position where now I know my intention is advocation, causing people to know their pain can become their purpose. Their wounds can become their wisdom. So that's kind of like what my intention is. And miracles probably encapsulates that.
There you go. And you can draw on your transformational book that you were sharing. And yeah, wow, what a dark night of the soul to go through. And being faced with mortality and really looking at, well, if I was in that space, would I have fulfilled everything I came here to do? And really take this is, I had a client, and she'd been dithering around wanting to do her book for a year, and finally she got into the book. And this it's not a pretty story, but it is reality, just like the reality that you are facing right now. We had just finished developmental edits. We had worked together, shaped her story, teased everything out that she wanted to share. And I scroll on Facebook and I see that she had passed from a heart attack from now, like she was 50. I mean, it was such a huge shock for the whole community, but you just never know when it's going to happen. But she had this book where she'd written down like her deepest passions and desires, and that we were able to pass that on to her children.
Oh, wow. What a legacy. Oh my gosh. That I've just got like every hair is standing up right now. That's just so appealed. But I want to actually say something that is what I touched on backstage too. Do you know one of the things that I have learned, Krystall, is that there are a lot more people attracted to a person and what they've got to say, whether that be through a book or through their influence in whatever that is, with that dark night of the soul, because it really makes a stand. And you probably know where this is going, because we're going to talk about you in a moment. And that dark night of the soul is what people hear and they go, oh my gosh, you mean to say this person's going through that? What are they doing to get through it? What did they do to heal themselves? And I'm just going to touch on a little bit of PTSD that you had suffered. And, you know, it made me, when you told me, it made me think, oh, is that a thing, you know? But it kind of explains a lot of things. Well, maybe I don't do this, this, and this because there is a post-traumatic stress disorder that I didn't even know about. But yours was opening emails. And please just enlighten us about that, because you've gone through an incredible dark night of the soul. And this is really going to just help step into, you know, the overcoming our obstacles.
Yes, the reason why I even realized, as you said, you know, we don't often know. I'm like, why do I have such an aversion to opening my emails and reading my emails? Like, I'm a reliable person. I want to stay on top of things. And then I kind of traced it back through my history, and then I suddenly realized, wow, after I left a really challenging situation, I got bombarded with emails from that person. And they were derogative. They were putting me down. They were telling me I was going to die. They were telling me I was a bad mother. Because during that time, I also actually had a brain tumor. So that is all coincided with me leaving a really challenging situation. So compounding lots of things on top of one another. And so him saying that I could die evoked a real fear, because I did have to undergo surgery. So yeah, I think that's where also then all the threats and the subtle coercive control, the gaslighting that happened was all making my mind go into the worst case scenarios. Like our minds, we are such creative beings, right? And so it was at night, I would paint it all out, whilst at the same time knowing that I'm always safe. Like this was probably the worst crises, or the most confrontational thing. But I had gone through other things where I not knowing how to pay the next mortgage, or moving into a different country with 2 weeks of finances and then knowing I had to find work, right? I have done those things, but I know I have this deep innate knowing and trusting my higher guidance, my higher self, my intuition, and I know I always land on my feet. And yet the mind goes into all of those stories that, yeah. And so I think what I had to
powerful, yeah. So really, I mean, so what I'm hearing here, and I'm just going to reiterate for a lot of people, is that you develop this huge fear around opening emails, and it all comes back. I actually developed something very similar that I didn't realize, and it was regarding to another person significant in my life. As a result, I couldn't go shopping for groceries. Now, I know that sounds crazy. And I used to say a joke to my kids and say, I hate shopping. And because I hate shopping, I'm always shopping, because I've never got enough stuff, because I never buy a lot of stuff. And then I have to go to the shops again. So this is the ironic character of what goes on. And so it just goes to show that we can have a fear and an internal thing that stops us from going forward because of an experience that we've had. And obviously you had to really kind of grab that, because that had held you captive, right? Yeah. So you had to grab that. Can you talk about, like, what does a person do to overcome that? Because you've got so many, you're a medicine woman. So tell us about how a person overcomes that kind of a fear.
I think the initial action was to take it out of my reality, make sure that it stopped. Because when we're in it, to the extent that I was, there is no way we can, like, it takes spaciousness and time to heal these things. So if we're constantly bombarded with something, it's the body, and we go into fight or flight or freeze, and the body cannot process it. So the first step was to get out of that situation, make that stop. And the second step then was I really used my breath a lot, like breath work, coming into the body, working with my nervous system to really help understand that I was safe. Realizing that also what happened there was was an echo of my childhood amplified, where I didn't feel safe, right? So it's like we need to, these situations in our lives, they're there for us. They happen for us, not to us, so that we can heal and overcome something that we're carrying that maybe we didn't even realize was still unconsciously playing itself out and holding us back. So I feel like often the universe, a higher self, higher wisdom, whatever we want to call us, is presenting us with a massive slap in the face or a massive event that forces us, and I know we don't like that word forcing, but it's commanding us, it's demanding us to look at what is going on so that we can dissolve it, we can overcome it. And yeah, for me, that was breath work, that was embodiment, it was really feeling safe in my body, it was visualizing the outcome that I chose to counteract the spinning thoughts that were creating these worst case scenarios, and coming back to choosing, like I choose what I want to create, how I want this to play out, and in that way calling my power back.
Yeah, and also acknowledging as well, to say, you know, it's okay that I have felt this way. And, you know, it's almost like putting yourself into a position where you're exposing the trauma for what it is, and then helping that subconscious part to almost understand that this is a situation that's happened here. Like that shopping episode for me, that happened because of a experience I had with another person that was significantly involved in my finances. And when I was placed into a position of so much embarrassment and fear, I didn't realize that the anxiety of going to the shops and spending money, and every time I'd get to the counter, I'd even tell people to go first before me. Instead of being a serial pusher-innerer, I would do the opposite, because I was so in fear of being embarrassed by the same experience. And I think calling it is just so incredible. But, you know, after all the years that I've been transforming people, and now I'm here, and you've heard what I've said about the 3 half books that I've written and the crisis that I'm in, can you see a parallel here for me? I mean, I'm just wondering, from a person like yourself that's looking from the outside in, can you see anything here that may be alluding to, well, you thought you were going to be doing this in your life? I talked about miracles and all that kind of stuff. It's actually about this. Can you see that from where you're sitting?
I feel there's definitely a theme around disempowerment and empowerment, right? Reclaiming power. And I feel like this is such a universal theme. Like it's the one from my story as well, in a different way. And in the reclaiming of power, often miracles happen, right? Because things that make us, push against an obstacle, when we overcome that, and I shared with you backstage about my lease, that I was given notice and I wasn't ready to go. I didn't want to go. And so I had to go through this entire internal process of being abandoned, being rejected, being thrown out for no reason. And it was echoes again of past moments in time that needed to be reclaimed, and I needed to bring my power and my free will and my choice to it. And so in many respects, I did the energy work around it of all of these patterns, and I healed them, and I signed the lease today. So I think it's similar, right? Like when it's that is empowerment. That is a miracle, because why did they change their mind? I don't know,
right? We are definitely the masters of our own destiny, and yes. Sometimes it's the what we get mirrored back to us from the world is what's inside us. So what I'm hearing there is, if you heal yourself first, then you're healing everything around you, so that what is your destiny can actually unfold. And I love that. And so what was the pattern you picked up? Because you did share that, that was linked into another pattern. So it was even though this was like, okay, now your lease is terminated, the other patterns may not have been the same as that. But what did you notice about the theme of that?
For me, the theme is unpredictability of just something bad happening, needing to be vigilant for something's going to happen, but also the theme of being on the run, needing to be, not being safe where I am, and therefore needing to leave. And that comes, I mentioned, it's past lives related, being a medicine woman, being a healer, that witch hunt wound that so many women have, where it's not safe to speak our truth, it's not safe to be who we are, or we're going to get killed. We may have to escape and run away and hide. And so
Burned
that
at the stake.
burned at the stake, yes. Being told off and shunned for simply being who we are. And so that pattern, there was a residue there of being on the run, of not deserving to just be and be welcomed. And so when I recognized that, I could claim that, and I say, I choose not to run. I choose to stay and to confront what is, rather than be in victim and avoid and run away. So that's what I did.
Wow,
and
that's
I got wanted.
You called it. You actually called the elephant in the room with your own subconscious.
Yes.
And said, hey, this is what's been happening. This is why I'm running. I call myself an overdressed gypsy. I live out of two places. I didn't stay very long in any place, and I tend to jump around. That's why I said we're like soul sisters. And then when you recognize that it's really a part of your background and it's what your subconscious is really wanting to, protect you from, in some kind of an offbeat way. But, I'm just going to also say too that one of your greatest mentors, and I always love to do this because I think it's great to offer, really good value to the audience. One of your greatest people you look up to is David Bayer, and you shared about his backstory. And just for inspiration, because obviously you've related it back to yourself, can you talk about what happened to him and where he is now?
Absolutely. Like, he had houses in foreclosure. He was an addict. He had real financial challenges. And now he owns a multi-million-dollar company and is very, very successful. And what I love, the way he did that is by combining different people. And he says so himself. He says he's the kind of, if Tony Robbins, Michael Singer, and Neville Goddard had a baby, that would be him. So Tony Robbins for the peak performance, the goal setting, the go-getting. Michael Singer, he wrote the surrender experiment. So for the flow state, for surrender, for allowing, and then Neville Goddard for manifestation, for training the imagination to visualize the desired outcome. So
can you just say the guy that what's the guy's name that wrote the book on the surrender?
Michael Singer.
Michael Singer. Oh, so write those down, guys.
Incredible.
I love that. I am definitely going to be, that's a real gold nugget. So what would you say to me? You mentioned about doing the void to value, and as we are, actually we're already most of the way through here. And there's just so much here, but perhaps if you wanted to enlighten us a little bit more on the void to value before we do the meditation. Do you feel ready for that? Absolutely. Or do you feel like we need to cover something else before we broach that?
No, I can lead into it now. So in order to help people really identify what makes them unique and what is the core driving force underneath everything they do, I heard an interview, or actually I spoke to Dr. John DeMartini, who was featured in The Secret, and he's such an amazing teacher. He's got such an incredible mind, and he coined that phrase, our voids create our values. That which we perceive as absent in our childhood, particular in those forming years, those 7 years, the early first years, that which we perceive as absent in those formative years is that which we strive for. And he in his life gives the example of, he grew up with a speech impediment and a learning disability. And look what he does now for a living. He teaches, he's an international teacher, gives lectures worldwide, and a speaker. So his obstacle became the driving force for him to overcome that and to create himself as in a new identity as a speaker and teacher. And
yes,
so
you remember his affirmation? I'm going to share his affirmation. I am a genius and I apply my wisdom. And that was at the point where he felt like an absolute dropout, where his parents left him off at the side of the freeway and he went off to meet with a homeless man that turned out to be a very, very wealthy man. So yes, I am a genius and I apply my wisdom. I love that. Keep going, Krystall. This is so exciting.
Yeah, so the void that I had in my life was the disempowerment, and I had second-degree burns as a child, and I was 4 years old, and I was in hospital in isolation, naked for 10 days. So that created a serious, imprint and patterns of control, not feeling safe. Again, it's so fascinating, right? How they reinforce things from past lives, if we believe in that, or parallel lives. And so that was my void, that feeling not safe, feeling disempowered. And so all of my life, I have looked at how my passion is to help people to embody their highest potential, to really be fulfilled in who they are, and to release any of the blockages, any of the resistance that is preventing us from being who we are and stepping into that fullest expression of who we can be. So, and I do that through the books, and as you know, and all of that, it's that empowerment piece. And the thing I shared about my dark night of the soul, that was it was the highlight of that, on that journey, that really pulled me down. You thought you were empowered? Let's give you this one. Let's see, there's another level and another layer of how you need to dissolve and release so that you can be in your true power, not in the performative power, but in your authentic power. Wow. And so that obstacle, that dark night of the soul, really was very, very humiliating, very humbling, very humbling to shatter the ego so that I could come into a place of empowerment that was pure, not ego-driven. So that was my journey, from that in a way, this fake empowerment through roles and achievements, to then a purer empowerment, like firstly moving away from the disempowerment and then moving towards the empowerment. So that is the journey. I believe we all have that, because often we fight in reaction to something. So we're moving away from what we don't want. But ultimately, in the true healing and the true transformation of our journey, we then come into that moving towards that pure, authentic, aligned power, or whatever it might be.
So symbolic, so powerful, and so real. And even you being so badly burnt as a child, that is so just so profoundly symbolic of you being an alchemist, because they say fire does alchemize. Yeah. So that is just incredible. So I think we come to the point now where we're going to move into the part that I know everybody looks, forward to on the show, and that is where I'm going to hand over to you to take the lead, because you are such an incredible woman to guide leaders through their books, the scripts for their life, and even their great leadership roles, and do this in what we know is the most important thing, and that is energetically, what did you say, your frequency, or your
your frequency becomes your currency.
Exactly. So I'm going to hand over to you, gorgeous lady.
Beautiful. So I'm going to take you through this exercise of finding out what your void was and what your value is beyond the conscious mind, because I've done this with so many of my clients, and we realize that actually it's not always what we think it is. So if it is, because when we understand this void to value dynamic, you have your unique core that all of your stories are based on, that you can share your book through, it becomes your lens, your focus, that you can use to tell your readers, your ideal clients, why you do what you do. So if it is safe to do so, I invite you to sit back and close your eyes. And just relaxing into your chair, the sofa, wherever you are right now. Taking a nice deep breath in. And on the out breath, letting go of the conversation, letting go of your thoughts, your feelings, and fully becoming present in your heart right now. Taking another deep breath in and relaxing on the out breath, allowing yourself to drop into yourself. Feeling that on each out breath, your muscles are relaxing even more. You're coming into your heart space. You're coming into your center. Feeling safe and held. And then I invite you to go on a journey of all the way back, flying back all the way into your childhood, hovering over your family home, where you grew up between the ages of 0 to 7. And if there were a few, just choose one that sort of pops up right now. Looking down, see if what the atmosphere was like. Was there joy, happiness, connection, or was there suppression or anger or violence? Just feeling that inner makeup that you were, of the environment that you were placed in. Maybe there was an absence of love. And perhaps there has been a specific moment in time, like I was describing in my childhood with the burning. Maybe there's something like that for you, where something happened that suddenly created a void in your life, in your childhood. And just name that for yourself right now. What is the void that you experienced in your childhood? What was missing? Now, there might be 1 or 2 words that are coming up. And just claim those for you, to choose those. And it's okay if there's more than one. And now think about your life and how this void has created situations, events, experiences, and how you've done your absolute best to overcome that void. Again, there will be some significant moments in your life that have been markers along the journey of you now claiming and embodying your values. For me, empowerment. For you, it might be connection, love, joy. So what is the opposite of that void for you? And how can you see your entire life up to this point through those 2 opposite expressions, values? And then the last question here is, how is your value playing itself out in your business, in the work that you do, in the calling, in your purpose? How are you now helping others to achieve and attain that value that is so important to you? And connecting to your breath, allowing all of that to just drop in. Allowing the awareness to become conscious. And then in a moment, bringing your focus, your attention back onto your body, back onto the room that you are in, and then slowly coming back and opening your eyes.
Wow. Wow, wow, wow. Jeepers creepers. I went back in time then. That was amazing. My goodness, Krystall, if I didn't put you down to being, the author of authors and, helping people to write their own script, I would put you down as that person who will help you find your genius zone, which is, hello, welcome to Terry Messenger's Genius Zone. So to conclude this, I just want to ask, is there anything, and I love to ask this question, that you would want to share that we haven't covered, or perhaps that we have and you'd like to reiterate before we close?
I feel that it is really important that we seize the day, that we every day we ask that question. I loved what you shared about John DeMartini, like the genius. I claim my genius. If we come and meet every day from that place, rather than from the doubts and the stuckness and the overwhelm that is created because we've not gotten the clarity, like that is my invitation to take the time to come to that clarity, and whether that is coming into your genius zone or having a conversation with me to help find that, so that we can get out of this gray zone of indecision and just being in the busyness of life and being swept away on that current and just being in reaction to life. Really come into being in the driver's seat and choosing each moment to make the most of the day, so that we can fulfill our potential and our calling, because the world needs it. We need to be in our fulfillment. We can't walk around half asleep anymore. So I think that saying, seize the day, is really what I want to think people with.
I love it. Wake up. And I just have so much more clarity as a result to this amazing conversation. And I just want to say, if you are wanting to have that same clarity in a very bespoke way, we have got Krystall's details in the show notes. So make sure you contact her. And, from the very bottom of my heart, I just want to thank you for everything you've brought to this podcast today.
Thank you so much, Terry.
Our show, where we have explored through this various topic, along with all the exciting new topics that we bring every week to enhance your personal mastery of excellence. Now, I'd love you to do me a favor. In fact, be part of the Legacy 1 million that I have in the vision for 2028. If you know someone who really would benefit from this recording, from this episode, please share it with them. And when you subscribe, you get notified every week of our episode as soon as it drops. So let's do that legacy thing. Let's share, let's care, let's enrich. And I look forward to bringing you another week of the most enriching content. So until next time, stay inspired, stay awesome, and keep on mastering your excellence.